Hi everybody, my name is Allan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, for any of you who've seen the show before, you know we talk about what Bridging Heaven and Earth means and what the theme of the show dedicated to the oneness is. And when it came time to book this season, we were looking through the New Age journals to see if there were new people who had come on, who had written books. And the first book we saw when we opened the book is this book, Bridging Heaven and Earth. And after the first thought of like, well, I guess we have to sue for copyright infringement, we moved on, like this would be, what an incredible fit this would be. And so we tried to contact our guest tonight, Leonard Jacobson, and we ended up hooking up and finding out that there was just such a really incredible connection about his experience of coming into that love, of coming into that one, of bridging heaven and earth. And Bridging Heaven and Earth is part of a trilogy that's Leonard's written, Words from Silence, Embracing the Present, and I think the most recent book is Bridging Heaven and Earth. And that is such a perfect fit for what this show is about, and to bring another voice. He was brought up in Australia. He comes from Australia. He was one of the leading spiritual teachers in Australia. And to bring a voice from another part of the world, as you know, people who've watched this show, that we have people from just all over the world coming here to share their love in their own way. But basically it's about that oneness, about that love, about that connection, about the bridging of heaven and earth. And an old friend of ours, Lessia, who was on the show a while back and came on, and we got a lot of calls about trying to get her back, and we couldn't get her back right now, but we have 2 videos of her music with us, and one of the songs is called Heaven and Earth, and that song Lessia and I wrote together, that we have a new CD coming out, Bridging Heaven and Earth. So this is a real Bridging Heaven and Earth show, so we're really excited about it, and I think if you can stay with us and stay with us for the next hour, that experience of the sameness between bridging heaven and earth, the real experience of the oneness, where all the divisions and all the separations break down, and all you experience in a human body feels like love, feels like bliss, feels like connectedness. And that's what Leonard is here to talk about, and that's what Lessia is here to sing about in her way. And so we're just really excited to have another show of Bridging Heaven and Earth where the real focus is bridging heaven and earth. So please join me in a short meditation. Just settle into your moment, settle into your life. Just come with us now in an hour of bridging heaven and earth. So please join me. Hi. So we're going to start tonight's show with a song from Lessia. It's going to be on the new CD, Lessia, Bridging Heaven and Earth. She and I wrote it together, and we're going to see it with a slideshow from an old friend of ours, Walter Mathison. So whenever we're ready, it's called Heaven and Earth.
Mason was the sweetest kid. He knew an awful lot till he grew up and got busy, and then somehow he forgot the stars dancing in his head that connected all inside. His world was more wide open then. He really had it right when he knew the bridge between heaven and earth. He knew the magic of love and all it was worth. Jenny was a happy girl. She found bliss in every way. Then she had a life to run, and there was no more time to play. And though her long-held dreams came true, they didn't fit her way. She kept thinking she'd forgotten something, but she couldn't really tell. She'd lost the bridge between heaven and earth. She'd lost the magic of freedom and all it was worth. Why does our childlike wonders begin to slip away? Why does our open heart close down more every day? Why does our trusting spirit slowly fade to gray? Two TVs and three telephones keep us on the line. We look good on the outside, but we left our joy behind. Well, Mason saw the stars once, and Jenny knew the truth. With a packaging so good out here, we seldom seem to choose to take the bridge between heaven and earth. Feel the magical oneness we all sense at birth, to know the power of love and what it's worth. To take the bridge between heaven and earth. Take the bridge between heaven and earth. Mason was the sweetest kid, knew an awful lot. Jenny was a happy girl, but somehow they forgot.
Hi, we're on the set with Leonard. Welcome, Leonard.
Thank you, Allan.
So, you know, we've talked about in the opening, I must have said Bridging Heaven and Earth about 112 times. I said some kind of record. When you wrote that book, what did you want it to say? What did you mean about Bridging Heaven and Earth?
Well, first I'd like to say that I'm glad you're not suing me for
Right.
copyright infringement here.
Not yet,
I-
because summons people.
Right, I had the same thought.
Right, everybody. I figured when I called you, he's going to go, who's going to sue first? And actually, we're both former lawyers, so it's like a real nut house
We
here.
could represent
Right.
ourselves. We don't even need to hire a lawyer.
Right,
Okay.
it's like Thomas Jefferson said. What did he say? If somebody who represents himself has a fool for a client. I think. So we've established that already, so I guess we can only go up from there. So what do you mean about Bridging Heaven and Earth?
Well, it's really something that came to me, that was revealed to me during these awakenings that I've been through.
And you went back, and why don't you take people up to the, through the awakenings and what the knowledge is that were given you during that period?
That's quite a long story, but it began in 1981, and I was pretty much taken over or taken into a spontaneous spiritual mystical awakening. I had no idea what was happening to me. I had no preparation for it. I had no framework to place this experience into. And what it did was it completely catapulted me into the experience of oneness, perfection, love. And this experience lasted about 3 weeks. It was a completely altered state of consciousness. And about halfway through it, I had a direct experience of God. And up until that point, I was an agnostic. And so this really took me by surprise.
Oh, boy.
And so that was the first experience. And it was just an ongoing, deep, healing experience of oneness, love, perfection, pretty much what this show is about. And there's been an experience similar to that about every 3 years. And it's interesting that they've almost been sequential, because
Really?
the second one picked up where the first one left off. And
Do you think it takes 3 years for you to digest it?
yeah,
Almost?
there was an integration process going on. So let's say God was compassionate and
Right,
gave,
instead
gave,
of
me,
overloading
gave me a
you.
rest, a
Right.
break. And but what was revealed throughout the whole thing, and it was becoming simplified, more and more simplified with each awakening, was this sense that it is a coming, what we're doing here in physical form, the purpose of our being here, the purpose of our journey through time as
we
humans,
think of it,
is this life in physical form is so sacred and so special that the peak of consciousness is realized while we're in physical form. It's a coming together of the formless and the form, of heaven and earth, of the mind and the body. And that coming together occurs within us in physical form as an experience within consciousness. And as we open up into that state, that perfect coming together between the formless and the form,
The harmony between the two.
the harmony,
to use
the
words.
coming together, it's a bringing
Right.
together of the two into the
Right,
one, which
right,
is the
absolutely.
revelation of oneness.
Right.
And
That there's no difference, in a sense. There's no separation.
all separation dissolves, just
Right.
as you said in your introduction. It's an experience. You can't actually comprehend what we're speaking of from the mind. It's something that has to be experienced directly. And then once you experience it directly, you know it.
Right, and there's no...
And then
right.
you move completely beyond belief. It takes you beyond the world of belief into the world of knowing. And it's not knowing within time. It's not knowing that you take into your mind and say, and convert it to knowledge. It's knowing that's always alive in the moment. It must be always alive in the moment.
Because that's the only place it really exists.
Right. And so what happens in that coming together of these dimensions is the revelation of what's actually here, where we are. This is already heaven on earth. This is heaven on earth. And we're not aware of it in our general sort of the level of consciousness we normally function at until we come into this meeting point, into this oneness, and then suddenly you see what's here, you behold it. And there's nothing much you can do from that point except surrender to it. And basically...
And write books and do television
write
shows.
books
hopefully.
and do television shows and just feel very grateful.
Right.
Yeah.
Or do whatever you do. I mean, it doesn't...
Right.
There's nothing you can do or can't do. It's just to move through life in that experience.
And it seems to me that that in itself is the remainder of the journey, because it's all very well to experience this exalted, awakened state of consciousness where heaven on earth is revealed. But at that deepest level, it's as if there's no time anymore. You've entered into the eternal now. And then the rest of the journey, if you want to move back into the world of time, and live life with some level of normalcy to it, then the rest of the journey, as I see it through life, is how do I integrate this higher awakened consciousness into daily living? How do I bring the two together? So it's again another case of bringing the two together until even that separation dissolves, and everything just keeps the two continually dissolving into the one.
The one.
Yeah.
And how did you decide that once you started to have these experiences, that the way you would manifest that is through writing these incredible books? And was it your idea to write a trilogy to begin with? I mean,
No.
just one that came then two? And
Yeah, I wrote the first, and I thought that was it. I'd never thought I'd have another awakening either. Every one I
Right.
have, I think, well, that's the last one.
Right.
Actually, I would like it to be the last one.
Really?
Well, they're very intense,
Uh-huh.
and they're very multidimensional.
Uh-huh.
Then the second one came, Embracing the Present. And,
So the first book was Words from Silence.
The first one was Words from Silence, and then Embracing the Present. And then those two deal much more with how to bring ourselves present, how to live in the present moment, how to remain present, how to deal with how to be with the thinking mind that keeps catching us back up into the world of the mind, the world of the ego. A lot of keys are revealed in those first two books. And then the third book, Bridging Heaven and Earth, goes much more into the mystical, metaphysical realm. And the third book can't really be read with the mind. It has to be read with the heart, the soul. It really has to be read by the you who already knows the truth. And so it's really just a resonating together in the truth. And
it's like vibrating, like we talk about the show, is what's the purpose of the show? And if we can give a purpose, it's to send out a vibration of love.
Right.
And that's...
Yeah. And what's beautiful as we come into this oneness is, in a way, it doesn't matter who's speaking and who's hearing, or who's asking the questions and who's answering the questions, because there's a level where we're all one anyway. There's only one being here interviewing, and one being responding.
Right, exactly.
Which is a very a beautiful realization. It takes a lot of the tension out of life, a lot of the stress when you come to that realization. It takes a lot of the competition,
a lot of the ego grinding and the ego going through that process. So why don't you take people through, like, Words from Silence, the subtext is an invitation to spiritual awakening. So what were the main focus of that book, and how did it, people respond to it and come into a greater understanding? And then we'll go through each book and see, how you've been led, and how you've led people all over the world into more experience and understanding.
The books really can't be clearly defined in any way, because each page is actually independent. So you can read a page and sit with it and meditate on it, or relate to it, move to the next page, and it's in a sense connected, it's sequential, but it's also independent. The first book essentially is just an invitation, saying to people who may not be aware of this awakened consciousness that's possible in everyone, for everyone, just letting them know that this is it. It's possible.
It's available.
It's available. This is what it is. This is what it feels like. This is what's possible. It's already full and whole and complete within you anyway. All you have to do is tune into it. All you have to do is wake up into it. Now, then it talks about, well, what are you waking up from, and what are you waking up into? And the answer, as it's revealed in the first two books, really, it's hard to separate the two, is that we're waking up out of this level of consciousness called the mind, where everyone is living in the mind, everything is experienced through the mind, channeled through the mind, interpreted through the mind, all our concepts, ideas, beliefs, opinions. The mind is like a computer that carries the whole of the past with it, and so we're not really here now in this moment when we're functioning at the level of consciousness called mind. And not only that, but within the world of the mind, as a level of consciousness, the ego develops slowly over our lifetime until it becomes the ruler, the dictator, at the level of mind.
And the ego, in the way you describe it, meaning?
The ego is ultimately, it can be really defined or explained in a number of different ways, but the simplest and most helpful way to really define the ego is that anything other than perfect, silent, awake presence of love is the ego. Any thought you have is of the ego. Even a spiritual thought is ultimately of the ego. And so what I teach, what I share is, don't believe in that. Don't believe in your thoughts. Don't believe in your beliefs. I mean, have them by all means. Enjoy them. But don't believe in them, because they're not the truth. The only thing that is the truth is life in this moment. Whatever is here in this moment is the truth. And what's really interesting for me as I'm sitting here with you is you're dissolving into light. And that's what happens when you come into oneness. I imagine that I'm doing the same with you. I can only guess that. Mm-hmm. And the oneness just starts to reveal itself. So what the invitation is to awaken out of this limited world of the mind, which is ultimately a world of illusion, into this deeper, fuller level of consciousness, which is your beingness, your essence. It's you who exists fully and only in this moment. And once you know that state, once you know it really deeply from your own direct experience, it can't ever be lost. It never goes away once you've really opened into that, or it's opened into you. And it's not like you have to create it because it's already there. It's really the best way of expressing it is it's a tuning in process, like tuning in a radio from one station to another, or a TV program. And so that's the invitation, to awaken to this deeper level of consciousness. And then what I say also is that when we're really here, really present, we discover that God is here. God is here in everything, as everything. This very moment is God revealing God's self. And
can it be otherwise?
No, it can't. Not if you're present.
Right.
But if you're not present, if you're in the world of the mind, then you're living in a world of your own creation that you sustain through your thoughts and through your beliefs, particularly belief. It's belief, it's the energy of belief that sustains us in this consciousness called mind.
And beliefs being? Give a few examples.
Well, whatever you believe in. I believe that I'm a man. I believe that I'll die. I believe that that I'm an Australian. I believe that.
Right.
Almost
you
all
believe what it says on your driver's license and your birth certificate and all those
Well,
things.
it actually even goes. It permeates into every aspect of our life. If you really examine it, almost every aspect of our life is sustained through our beliefs, and it's very challenging to anyone really, the possibility of moving beyond belief, and what I say is the truth is beyond belief. And I also say that it's in the books. The truth. This is very puzzling in a way. Truth has no power to penetrate into the world of belief. Belief must dissolve of its own accord before the truth can arise and fill you. So it's almost like belief has to recognize its own limitations and surrender to truth, to God, to love, however you want to put it.
But in a way, it's a spiral. I mean, you have more experience, and then you have more faith, and you have more surrender. You know, it's
Absolutely.
like so. You know, it never is like as linear. As
No. It's a spiral is definitely the way to put it. It's just as you deepen into presence, the mind is able to relax. As the mind relaxes, then you're able to deepen more into presence. Interestingly, what happens is as you deepen into presence, as you deepen into this level, that brings up whatever's still there within you that needs healing and release. So if you've got wounds from childhood, you don't have to go looking for them. What will happen is a natural part of this process.
It's like shine the light on them.
Exactly. And it actually brings them up. And all you have to do, you don't have to fix these wounds, you don't have to analyze them, any of that. All you have to do is allow these things up into the light of consciousness, into the energy of your own being, your own presence, which is love and acceptance. And then something almost miraculous occurs in that. And you have a real healing going on, a release of you from the past, which allows you to deepen into the present. And what happens also is once you've done your life in this lifetime, all your childhood stuff and all your relationship with your mother and father, it sometimes happens that past lives start to spontaneously come up. And my guess is, or my experience is, that once your past lives are substantially brought up into consciousness, then what starts coming up, and this is where it becomes very interesting, is collective issues, so that there's actually collective healing goes on within your consciousness if you're present enough and large enough to allow that and not be frightened by it. But okay, bring it on. Okay, God, whatever it is, I'm here. I have no attitude of for or against. I have no judgment. And so whatever it is welcome to come through and be healed and released. And I'm absolutely convinced that it does occur at a collective level. Once
you experience it that way.
I do experience it, yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of guests talk about, like, at this particular time, I mean, the Earth is healing, and almost the Earth is healing the rest of the universe, because this was like a festering sore in a certain way.
Yes.
And that, you know, we're all experiencing that. We're all experiencing that healing process as being part of the whole, because we are the whole and we're part of the whole. I mean, that's the glory of it.
Right. And it's so interesting to observe how when I started this work 16 years ago and started to go through my own awakenings, when I was working with people, it would take a year, 2 years, 3 years to get them to a certain point. Or for them to get to a certain point. I don't want to say for me to get them there. But
for that openness to
for
happen.
that openness to happen. The work that had to be done, the
grinding.
The grinding, the encountering and all of that, the expression. But now it seems to be really collapsing in and maybe 1 year is a realistic time frame for people who really want to make a commitment to awakening, and some are getting it in a weekend or in a day, or it's amazing actually. It's as if there are waves of consciousness moving forward or awakening.
There's a lot of talk. I don't know if you see it because you travel. We just basically stay and do the show, and people come to us. But
that's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, it's one way to do it. But you travel the world. I mean, and there's a lot of story about kids coming in. I mean, in indigo kids, or I mean, a lot of different definitions or categories, but just coming in with extraordinary gifts and consciousness.
It's absolutely true. I feel so privileged and grateful when I have 14 or 15-year-olds attend one of my seminars, and they're so obviously already
having
here.
An extraordinary experience.
We're just they're already where I'm pointing my finger and saying this is possible. They're already there. And they're having an extraordinary experience. But what I was saying about the waves is, as I think in the 60s, a whole lot of us did this big effort and pushed forward and went through a lot of difficult work to get there. And that made it easier for the next wave to come through. And then each wave that comes through, it's like there's more and more people getting onto the next wave and coming through. And there'll be a point...
like the 100th monkey.
The 100th, that it's just going to suddenly
the momentum is shifted enough that you've reached the top and it's like downhill. The wind's at your back now.
It's quite possible that one day we'll open our eyes, or one day I'll wake up or you wake up and everybody's awake. And it'll be a very strange experience.
Yeah, it's going to be a weirder coffee house. I'm not used to that.
That's right. It is. Anyway, I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking or optimism, but it's very possible that could happen. On the other hand, if you get out there and watch TV or read the newspapers...
Doesn't look like it happened yet.
It's not happening yet, no. So,
well, not before we got on the show. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is like the 100th monkey, the show.
That could be it.
You never could tell. So how is your experience going around the world, and are people becoming more and more open and more people, wanting to read the books, coming to the workshops, stuff like that?
It seems to me that people are at different levels in their journey, and I can't get people to pay attention to the work that I'm doing unless they're really at that level that they relate to it. There's a lot of people that are just not interested. They're more interested in other kinds of things, and so you have to allow that and let everyone do what they're doing. But the ones that are interested are getting it really easily and becoming present. But it's such an ongoing, no wonder it's taken us so long to wake up, Alan, because it's such a delicate and tricky journey, because you can awaken or have an awakening experience, and the ego can't wait to grab it. No, to grab it, to steal it for its own, and then walk around and say, I'm enlightened, I'm awakened, and then the whole thing is lost.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who go so far and then kind of just...
It's tricky business. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
We ended up having lunch together and breakfast and lunch. I don't know, we were driving around all day.
And listening to music.
Yeah, listening to music and talking. And, really it was an interesting thing, is that it's just, we've been so gifted, and still it's not an easy process here, or it hasn't been throughout history. And maybe now we're coming, and we were talking that it seems like the energy is different now. Like you're saying, people are coming, younger kids are coming to it, and people who normally took a long time to do this aren't taking as long now. There's some different thing happening now, it seems.
What I say to people now is, you better hurry up and get enlightened. And I just use that lightheartedly, that term. You better hurry up and get enlightened, because that's the easy part. The difficult part is, okay, now that I'm awake, how on earth do I live in this world? How do I do that? Because everything changes. The way you are in relationship changes, your attitude towards work, money, everything changes. How do I live in this world that is still functioning in another way?
Like an old paradigm. How do you bring the new paradigm to the old
And how do you live in this new paradigm,
this
new way of being?
All right, Lena, I think we'll take a break and listen to the second Lessia song. This song is called Enough God, Lessia wrote, and it's a beautiful video. Nancy Campbell did it a while ago, and it's Lessia doing Enough God, written and performed by Lessia. So whenever we're ready.
Teach him how to hate. Don't ask why, just do it. Teach him how to kill. So well, there's nothing to it. Teach him how to load and fire for the Holy Land. Take a little boy and make him an angry man. But isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? And on the other side sits a mother crying. Son is back, but not for long, 'cause he lies dying. Another faceless boy shot down for their holy land. Though she prays for him, she can't really understand. She says, isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? People, they close their eyes, they don't see what they're doing. 'Cause they'll trade anything for the dreams that never set away. They burn, they bomb, they bargain for their holy lands. But nobody wins that way, nobody ever can. Tell me, isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? Isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? Isn't there enough God? Isn't there enough God? To go around, to go around, to go around, to go around.
Hi, we're back with Leonard. And that's Lessia, that's going to be on her new CD, Bridging Heaven and Earth. So we're back with Leonard. In one of your press releases, you talked about somebody sent us some information about 4 steps. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? 4 steps, and is this news to you?
I have
Holy
no idea.
Christ.
I have no idea what you're talking about. 4 steps.
I must have gotten the press release for somebody else to show.
It was probably mine, but I can't remember what
It
was
sounded
in
like Buddha. I mean, I remember thinking the right understanding, right
Oh,
sport
oh,
jackets.
oh,
I don't know,
right.
something. Yeah. Dressing well. I don't know what it was. But you don't remember that? We could go on. I could probably ask another question.
No, I can try and answer that. I'll see. Actually, I'm not sure that I can. The 4 steps. Okay. First is right Ah, yes, right understanding.
That's right. That was the
That's
first.
the, thank you. You gave me a clue on that. You gave me a hint.
I'm not giving you any more. 'Cause
Okay, okay. I think they're coming to me.
Okay.
Um,
You better check your press packet.
it's in the books. The first is right understanding. In other words, we really have to have an understanding of who we are and what we're doing here, which brings about a relaxation, because until you know what the purpose of this journey is, and you have a clear understanding of that, then the mind is not going to relax its control over everything.
And how do you get this right understanding? Do you have tools, or do you recommend tools, or
Well,
techniques, or ways?
No, it's simple. I'll just tell you.
Oh, all right, all you millions of people, whatever the right understanding is
Here's
coming
the right
now.
understanding.
Here it is.
Okay.
Go, baby.
So here it is. The sole purpose in being here. Are you ready for it?
I don't know if I
The-
fade or turn the light.
The sole purpose, that's S-O-L-E, the sole purpose in being here is to be here. The sole purpose, S-O-U-L, purpose in being here is just to be here. And so the right understanding is to realise that we're all lost in the mind, we're caught in the mind, we're actually imprisoned in the world of the mind, and the task is to find our way through that. It's a little bit like Moses leading his people out of Egypt. That's actually
Rather
a good,
than the blind leading the blind.
something like that. That would help. The second is coming into right relationship. Right relationship with your thoughts, your ego, your emotions. Right relationship with life, and that right relationship is based on love. Is love a relationship of love and acceptance? It's the only thing that will work. A lot of people on the spiritual path are very subtly trying to annihilate the ego. They're trying to get rid of it. When I awaken, when I become enlightened, there'll be no ego left. That is an absolute guaranteed way to make sure you never awaken. The ego is involved in that.
Yeah, the eye. The eye is just running rampant.
Right, the ego is involved in that, actually getting you to try and annihilate it so that it'll never happen, because the ego will
it's
never
very
allow that.
tricky like that,
It's
yeah.
tricky, and there's actually a lot of teachings. If you look at some of the great masters, there's some wrong teaching in some of it. If you look through some of the teachings, there is definitely, it's implied that when you awaken, your ego is dissolved or annihilated or gone, and that's very unhelpful. So right relationship based on love, in relationship to others, life, yourself, and every aspect of yourself, which really means an end to judgment. Judgment is what keeps us in separation. Any kind of judgment. It's in the story of Adam and Eve. It's revealed there. God told Adam and Eve, you can eat of any fruit of any tree in the garden except the fruit of the tree of knowledge of what is good and evil. And what did they do? They got tempted by the serpent, and they ate. And then most people who read the Bible assume that somehow because they broke God's word, God's instruction, they were kicked out by God, punished in some way for doing that. And that's absolutely untrue. What happened was that they were in oneness. In Adam and Eve, as a metaphor, a story, a metaphor reflecting oneness. They were in the Garden of Eden, which is oneness. Heaven on earth, just heaven actually. The moment you decide this is good and this is evil, you've gone from one into two.
The duality.
You've gone into duality, which is the world of the mind. And so you've taken yourself out of the oneness into the two. God didn't do it. God's saying, I told you not to do that, my beloved children. Why did you do that? And then Adam and Eve freak out. We all freak out. It's a metaphor for all of us. And then we become lost in the world of the two. And we get more and more lost and we can't find our way back. And judgment, there's even a judgment about being in the world of the two. So there's judgment upon judgment upon judgment. So if you want to find the way back to oneness, you have to reverse that process and go through you have to basically go through a process of transcending judgment in your life. Now, how do you do that? That's a tall order also, because you can't try and get rid of judgment. That would be another judgment. So what do? All you can do is bring judgment to consciousness whenever it arises within you and just see it for what it is. Oh, there you are, judgment. Hello. And let it go. You're not for it or against it. And what happens is that over a period of time, it all begins to relax and you start finding your way back to oneness. So what are we up to? That's
three.
We're up to 3, are we? Oh, well, the third is probably the most important. You must have the direct experience of presence, of being here now. A lot of people are walking around thinking they know what it means to be present, but they actually don't. You have to have that direct experience, and once you've had it yourself, you've directly experienced it, even if it's for 5 seconds, you know it. You will never be deceived again. You must come through your own experience to be able to distinguish so clearly between what is awakened presence in this moment, life in this moment, you in this moment, and then what is it like then when I go into my mind? It's a different experience. So once you've had the direct experience of awakened presence or just being present, then everything else can flow from that. You can't really bring right relationship to your mind, your ego, your feelings, unless you've got the awakened presence within you anyway, because that is where the love and the acceptance is. So there are 3 very important things. The 4th I can't remember.
Good. So we'll move on. I can't remember it either.
Yeah.
Shows you a bad interviewer and a bad guest. We got 3 out of 4. We got 75%.
3's not bad. 3's
right
not
now.
bad.
If only we were playing baseball.
That's right.
3 out of 4. So when you started to have these experiences, I mean, what you found was that your life changed. I mean, and it changed over time because you had to like integrate it. You had that to become real to you.
It changed after the first awakening. My life changed completely and totally during that time. But then, like for example, I never went home after that awakening. My life just moved on and on and on and went in a different direction. I never returned to at least for some years. I've just followed a path, whatever was revealing itself in the moment. But then as I decided and as I chose to assimilate more into the living in the world again, then there was a whole process of learning how to integrate that. And that seems to be a trial and error thing. You make mistakes, you realise that didn't work, that's not keeping me in the harmony, that's not keeping me in the love. What hook inside me hooked me into that? And so it really becomes a process of discovering the hooks that are still in you, because we still exist at the human level. So what aspects, what hooks, what desires, what fears are still functioning that will hook me into a lesser level of consciousness? Or
Now you talk about no judgment or lack of judgment. Now, is there such a thing, would you say, as discernment?
Yeah, discernment is different to judgment. I'm often asked that question. Judgment has an energy in it that, again, I don't think you can define it. I can't define it, but you know when it's an energy of judgment in it. And when it's just discernment. Discernment is exercising your free will to choose to look here or look there, or this feels better for me. There's no rejection in it. There's no pushing away.
But we can see what one would describe as differences, like there's a taller person and a shorter person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're not judging whether taller or shorter is good, but we see it. We're discerning that.
The judgment comes in when you say, this is good, this is bad. I want this, I don't want that. But then discernment, it is a fine line, but for me it's an energy that you know whether the judgment ultimately is what's underneath judgment is a desire to annihilate. I want to get rid of that. It's quite, when you really go deeply into judgment and really uncover its true nature and bring the judge up in you to examine, to bring to consciousness, you get to see what it's really like. And it's really an energy of annihilation.
Annihilating whatever you're judging to be negative?
Ultimately, yes. Yeah, you want to get rid of it. You don't want it there. Criticism is an attempt to make someone smaller. Like, I'll criticize you so you feel smaller and I get larger, then I can have control. But if that doesn't work, then I better move to the next level, which is judgment, which is a very subtle, very unconscious energy of annihilation. So it's really something worth transcending in our lives.
So you hold workshops all over the world where you bring like the 3 steps or the 4 steps, if you can remember, or just... How would you take somebody through, like, how you would go through a workshop? I mean, do you have workshops for weekends, for weeks?
They vary. They vary. For example, if I'm doing a 2-hour evening gathering, then I'll just start there. I have no agenda. There's no. I don't have anything I'm planning to say. We'll sit there. I'll sit there, and slowly we'll come together in this oneness. Well, actually, quite quickly, and then either something will come to me, I'll start speaking about something without having thought about it, or somebody will ask a question or share something. And so an evening like that is completely unstructured. And what happens is people ask questions, or something comes up for them because something that requires healing, so or is in need of healing. In a workshop, then, like a weekend workshop, it is a little more structured, but often, but the underlying thing is pretty much what we did with this interview. We didn't prepare it. I had no idea what you were going to ask me, and I imagine you didn't really know what you were going to ask anyway.
No, I hadn't gotten there yet.
Right. So it's like that in the workshops, but underneath it all is this process of recognizing when I'm in the mind, how to be with emotions, keep coming into that deeper level of presence. You only have to experience the awakened presence, and that does all the work by itself. Once you know that place, once that's awake in you, alive in you, it's as if that has a momentum of itself. It's like inviting God into your life in a direct way, and for me it feels like God takes over, and everything that happens in your life is somehow orchestrated to keep deepening you into awakening, or bring up whatever stuff is still there that needs to be brought to consciousness and healed and released.
So in that way, that you would feel comfortable saying that everything is perfect, everything is leading you into more experience, into more consciousness, into more love.
Yeah, from the perspective of truth and presence, that is absolutely true, and I never ever forget that. But you know, I'm not beyond occasionally getting caught and forgetting that everything is perfect, and then maybe 2 weeks later you realise, oh, that was perfect. It was difficult, but what a perfect lesson! What a perfect deepening.
I wouldn't have chosen that.
I wouldn't have chosen that, definitely not. But thank you, God, because how else would I have learnt that?
So do you think as more experiencing happens, that gap is not 2 weeks but 2 hours or 2 minutes, or, you know what I mean? We're coming more into
Yes.
even the realization
Right.
of the moment.
Right. And then there's another level. See, there's levels and levels and levels, and I'm sure many of your viewers have experienced this. There's a point that opens up where everything seems to be reflecting to you in that moment, messages or truth, or the very moment is the reflection of everything you could possibly want to know.
Yeah, we're going to have all, I guess, looking for license plates tonight, so it could be rough out there.
Could be. It's a bit like that.
No, there's a tremendous amount of synchronicity
Yes,
now. I mean,
yeah.
for just like the Bridging Heaven and Earth book. I mean, how we all came, we came together. I mean, really, I mean, as soon as I saw that book, I said, oh, this guy's got to come on the show. I mean, I don't know, but anybody
Right.
who's writing a book, Bridging Heaven and Earth, I mean, I know he's going to be far out.
Right. Well, our meeting over breakfast was very spontaneous and easy, so it's like we don't really need to speak to each other, but we'll do it anyway.
Right, exactly. Do you find now that part of like the process is manifesting that understanding, either in one way or another, and collaborating and doing it? I mean, coming together, as much as we can without ego, to do a show, to do a this, to do a that, whatever it is. But, we could come together, and for however long it means,
Right.
Is appropriate for us to come together.
It's
But more
like-
and more we can collaborate and
It's
do
like
it beautifully.
it's like community.
Right.
It's-
Common unity.
Yeah.
A
yeah,
recognition. of
Right. There's community all over the world, and when you find each other, when you encounter each other, it's really a blessing.
I mean, when you're traveling the world, do you find more of that available now in your life? I mean, we're in a funny position. This is the 95th show, and extraordinary people come in from all over,
right.
and come and then just spend.
So you're meeting them all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's like just unbelievable how people. There are people more well known than the Bridging Heaven Earth show, and there are
Right.
people more well known than you. But we meet people who are so extraordinary and having such fantastic experiences that no one's ever heard of. We were talking about that today. Who self-published their book, but
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's not unbelievable. I mean, it's just happening all over. Incredible CDs, incredible books.
It seems to be scattered all over the place, and the exciting thing is that some kind of coming together where there's a connection, whether it's through the internet or meeting on a show like this. It's very affirming to meet others who know what you're speaking about and know how you feel and know how you live in the world. It's affirming. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be islands. We're interdependent. It's deepening. It's written somewhere, when two or more are gathered in my name,
Right.
there I am in the midst of them. And I relate to that statement so deeply. When we come together, something deeper opens up for all of us. And I experience that all the time.
Yeah, actually, I mean, people ask me sometimes, if I had tools or something to recommend, and I say, well, yes and no, and you're using words and all that. But I mean, the things that I would talk about is like being able to be quiet, whether you call it meditation, but some ability to be quiet and being around holy company. I mean, not that everyone's not holy, but people who have some amount of recognition of the surrender to God, the experience of God, the desire for God, however you want to phrase it and stuff like that. And that is, I would say that for me, looking at it and surveying the human condition, are the two most important things.
Yeah.
If you could use words and what's important and what's not important, things like that.
I agree. You mentioned techniques or methods. One of the things that I share is the key to being present. Because we can meditate for lifetime after lifetime and not actually really become present. If you look at meditation, ultimately what it is a practice at the level of mind, the mind practicing something to get somewhere, and it can't happen at that level. Or you might have brief moments of silence, and as soon as you finish meditating, you're back into the world of the mind as you always were. And there's such a simple key that was revealed to me or came up during one of these awakenings or somehow in this process. And I'm happy to share it here. It's so utterly simple. It's so simple it seems absurd. The key to being...
The rest of the show probably won't line up with that anyhow, so we're fairly safe.
Well, the key to being present is simply to remember to be present with that which is present. Just bring yourself present with what's here. And you will come out of the mind, and you will become silent, and you'll be present. It's that simple. And then it's just a question of moment to moment remembering, choosing to be present with what's actually here. You can't try and stop the thoughts. If you try and stop the thoughts, they just keep going. There's no way we can try to stop thinking. And yet so much of that comes into meditative practice. I'm meditating to stop thinking. And it doesn't work, ultimately. In my experience, what really works simply and instantly and immediately is that simple key. Remember, moment to moment, to be present with what's actually here. If you can see it, hear it, feel it, taste it, or touch it, you can be present with it through your senses. And then you could ask, well, who is present? Who is present with what is here? And the answer is just in silence, I am. And that I am presence is the awakened state of being. That's it. That's the Christ consciousness. Just I am. Not I am enlightened. Who is enlightened? I am. It keeps coming back to that silent, still presence that's utterly here and utterly connected to everything that is here.
It's far out. Just say.
It's very simple.
It's simple,
It's
and
simple.
the interesting thing is, it feels better. I mean, one feels good and one doesn't. I mean,
Right.
once you start experiencing what feels good, I mean, then it's like, what do you choose? And it's easy. It starts to be easy to choose that because if one feels, you feel happy, and the other you don't, and it's clear.
There's one problem with that. What you're saying is true to a point, but the question is, who is doing the choosing? And until a certain level is reached, the ego is doing the choosing. And the ego is going to say, no way, I don't want that presence, I don't want the happiness, I've got everything worked out, I know life is about suffering, I know that I'm not loved, I'm not accepted, I know that I'm not good enough, but I've worked out how to deal with it, I'm in control, I'm looking after everything, I know how to get on in this world, I know all the strategies to make myself get what I want. And so the ego is not very, very willing to give up the control. And it's a gentle seduction of the ego to bring it to a place of relaxation, a place of comfort, and ultimately to a place of surrender. And so it does come down to, well, who's doing the choosing? And then a certain point is reached where suddenly you're here enough, the I am of you is here enough, that it transcends that.
So there's more momentum for that.
Exactly. That starts to self-perpetuate, and you find a shift occurs where prior to the shift, you're predominantly living in the world of the mind. That's your home. And you occasionally have experiences of presence and being. And when the shift occurs, you predominantly live in the world of presence, in the world of being, and you occasionally have experiences in the mind. And once that shift occurs, then really, as far as I'm concerned,
It's
done.
downhill.
That's it.
It's downhill.
forget about it.
Right, just go enjoy.
Right, exactly.
You know, have fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So would you say that's, I mean, you're traveling the world having fun and writing these books and meeting with people and just sharing their joy and sharing your, I mean, you know, we always talk about it and using words almost has to include a duality.
Right.
But in essence, that's what your life has been about.
A lot of my life is about that, but not all of it. At times, I make choices that lead me down a path that become exhausting for me or takes me out of the harmony, and so it's up to me to be smart enough to correct that choice and hopefully not too, as you said, shorter rather than later, sooner rather than later.
So just quickly, what do you think, I mean, someone obviously like yourself has had tremendous experience. How do we get to bite the apple again? How do we do that? We just still have desires, we still have needs, we still have, how would you describe that?
How to bite the apple? How to come
No,
back?
how do we end up? You know, here's somebody like you and you do these things that take you out.
Oh, well, ambition will take you out. Any desire for the future will take you out of, whatever takes you out of the present moment.
Right.
And then
it starts to build a momentum.
It builds up one.
Right.
You can go out a little way, but if you're not careful, it starts to spin out, and then before you know it, you're caught in ambition or desire or whatever, rejection, whatever it is. You get caught into the ways of the world.
Right.
And there's a very true statement at some point that arises within us, which is, I am in the world, but not of the world. Right. And so there's a kind of detachment, in a sense.
That develops. You know, I think we've done it again. The show's over. So anybody wants any information, 805-687-2053. Leonard's workshops, his books. He's all over the world. Good night. God bless you. Thanks for coming. 805-687-2053. Good night.